Hello and welcome back, all 5 of you. My name is Pyla Merchant, and board games are a great way to have fun with the whole family. Monopoly makes you want to stab your cousin for placing a third motel on the board. Cards Against Humanity allows you to truly realize how dark your family's minds are. And the Game of Life allows you to truly realize how much you hate living. Speaking of hating living, you can even take out the old Ouija board and invite great Grandma Ivory to come and play with you. Overall, for the past century, board games have been a very popular way to spend time with your family. So, in your personal opinion, what is the next logical place to go after creating board games? Like, what do you do with board games now that they've been created? Did you guess making movies about board games? Because some person did. Seriously though, I don't know how this all got started in the first place. You've got Battleship, Clue, Under the Boardwalk, Ouija, but even though we have enough of a dumpster fire from those 4 films alone to keep us warm all winter, there is one truly great and memorable film that has to do with the board game, and weirdly enough, it's not even a real board game. Jumanji, no, not that one. Jumanji is a movie from 1995 about a weird African safari board game that when you play it, it summons all kinds of terrible terrors. Stampedes, floods, poop monkeys, you name it, this movie has it all. Some viewers may also note that the movie is mainly inspired by a book by the same name. Although I say that, most of the movie is pretty much just made up storyboarding to give the book more life than the original actually had. The movie follows Alan and Sarah as they play a board game by the name of Jumanji that Alan found buried in the ground. Although they start the game in 1969 due to a series of surprising twists and weird stuff caused by the board game, it's not until 26 years later when the game is actually once and for all beaten. Well, at least until the next Jumanji movie, but I'm not even going to start talking about that. So if that sounds like the kind of adventure that you want to go on, throw on your safari hat. I don't have one personally, but pretend this is a safari hat, and let's go ahead and start trudging through the jungle that is the movie Jumanji. We open up on some kids from the early 1900s hurriedly trying to bury a trunk in the middle of the forest at night during a thunderstorm and while being watched by a pack of wolves.
Don't worry, it's just a pack of wolves.
Ah yeah, there's nothing dangerous about those. After the kids get the trunk into the hole, one of them slips into the hole and the board game starts making this weird thumping noise. The kid then starts freaking out about the game and saying that the game is trying to get him, but luckily for the kid, Jumanji is only really capable of acting like a toddler by making lots of noises when it doesn't get its way. They then finish burying it, and as they run back to wherever they came from, the camera focuses heavily on this mile marker thing. And just like that, it's now the year 1969. We meet Alan as he's riding around town on his bike.
All yours, Alan.
Thanks, Bill.
Your job is completely pointless. As Alan is just enjoying his days, a group of bullies start chasing after him because kids are dicks. He then takes off towards his dad's factory, and once he gets there, he runs inside as fast as possible. Also, there's a couple of adults just walking by with no care as if there's not a kid being bullied right in front of them. What the heck, guys? Once inside, he takes a deep breath and goes to talk to this cool dude with a cool afro named Carl. He tells Carl about his whole bully situation, and Carl, in an effort to make Alan feel better, decides to show him a new pair of shoes that he created.
What is it? Man, this is the future. If I can get Will Chamberlain to wear them, I predict there'll be a pair of those in every closet in America.
You know, they really just look like normal shoes to me, but Kyle seems rather passionate, so I'll trust him on this one. Shortly after Kyle's shoe show, Alan's dad comes by to yell at him for not standing up to his bullies, and while Alan is trying to explain the situation to his dad, he unknowingly puts Kyle's shoe on the rubber conveyor belt, and by doing so, accidentally absolutely destroys both the machine and Carl's dreams. Alan eventually goes outside to find out why his bullies are so upset with him, and it turns out they're upset because...
Just because you're parish doesn't mean you can hang around with my girlfriend.
Yeah, it's because he's not allowed to be friends with someone's girlfriend. They then beat Alan up and steal his bike, but that means that there should be at least one bike left over in the scene since all the bullies rode their bikes there, but there's not, so oh well, I guess. After Alan was beat up, the camera focuses on yet the same mile marker from the intro, and then we get to see that there's a construction site right beside the factory. Alan starts to hear a thumping noise coming from this site, and despite the fact that that's a rather normal noise to hear from a construction area, he decides to go in and investigate. Also, none of the construction workers say anything to the 11-year-old boy just walking through a dangerous area. Why don't any of the adults in this world seem to care about this kid? Whatever the reason may be, Alan eventually finds where the thumping noise is coming from, pulls the trunk out of the mud, opens it up, finds Jumanji inside, and just straight up takes this creepy ass game home with him. Alan then gets home and starts messing with the game board a bit and finds out that it's kind of magnetic or something. Just then his mom walks into the room to freak out about his wounds, and a little bit later we see Alan sitting at his dining room table as his parents are getting ready to go to some assembly thing. Before they head out though, they go to talk to Alan about wanting to send him to a nice boarding school, which then triggers an argument to break out that pretty much ends begins with Alan and his dad not liking each other. Upset by the argument, Alan starts packing his stuff up and gets ready to run away, but right when he goes to open the door, Sarah, his bully's girlfriend, knocks on the door because she wanna hang. Alan agrees to the hang session, then introduces Sarah to his fancy new board game. Sarah though is ultimately not very interested by the game and gets up to leave the table, but when she does, she accidentally rolls the dice and her piece begins to move by itself. Once the piece reaches its destination, a riddle appears on the green circle thing in the middle of the board that says,
"At night they fly. You better run. These winged things are not much fun."
Right after that, the duo hears some bat noises in the chimney and creeped out by the bats, Alan too decides that he doesn't want to play anymore, but also accidentally rolls the dice. His riddle basically says that he's going to be sucked into the game board until another player can roll a 5 or an 8, and this creepy scene then plays out. Sarah, being justifyingly terrified by this, screams, and then the bats come flying at her, thus chasing her outside of the house. After 26 years of time travel, we meet Judy and Peter along with their aunt Nora as they're going on a house tour of Alan's old house. While everyone is looking around the house, the realty lady comes up to Peter to try and strike up a conversation with him, but he doesn't say anything back to her. Judy then reveals to us that their parents died, and ever since then, Peter hasn't really been the same. Judy then tells the lady some BS story about her parents' death because she's a liar, pants on fire, and then we watch as Nora's lock-picking skill isn't quite high enough for that lock yet. Although there wasn't really a scene where they bought the house, I assume that they purchased the place because Nora asked Peter to bring a suitcase to the attic and then they can all have
ice cream and bourbon.
You know, I don't think the kids are gonna like the taste of that second one. Peter does as he's told, but when he walks into the attic, a bat flies out and petrifies Peter. Aunt Nora then goes up to take a look for the bat and hears some bat noises, and the next day, the exterminator comes out to check on it himself. Although he doesn't find any evidence of a bat living in the attic, he still does take some time to tell the children a very inappropriate story about the last owners of the house murdering their son. Although the story is absolute BS, it still scares Peter like everything else does, and he opts into staying the night in his sister's room for protection. The next morning, the kids are getting ready to head off to school when they start hearing a thumping noise coming from Jumanji up in the attic. Although the sound is loud as fuck, Nora doesn't hear it for unexplained reasons and then leaves after telling the kids to make sure they don't miss the bus. The kids then decide to just ditch school entirely in favor of looking for the thumping noise and eventually find the source stowed away in the corner of the room. They open the game up and start reading through the rules when
Gotta be microchips or something.
that doesn't make any sense. Judy goes first, and after her piece moves, the game summons some giant mosquitoes to come mess with the kids. After being proper traumatized, Judy finds a tennis racket and lobs one of the buzzy boys straight out the window. The other mosquitoes then follow their fallen soldier outside, and now it's Peter's turn to roll. He ends up rolling double, so that means that he gets to roll again after they deal with a little riddle. The kids then start to hear some noises coming from the kitchen downstairs, and upon further investigation, it turns out that the noises are being made by... Oh my god, they're poop monkeys! How do you even create something this hideous? So while the monkeys absolutely destroy the kitchen, the kids just simply return to the game. This time, Peter rolls a 5 and summons...
Judy, someone's in here.
Is that you, Mozart? Peter summons a lion because the kids have no idea what to do in this situation. Neither do I, mind you. They run out of the attic as fast as possible, but because Peter rolled a 5, he also summons Alan back from the jungle, and Alan successfully takes care of the lion by locking it in Nora's bedroom. The kids hide because they're petrified, and Alan goes exploring around his old house. Eventually, the children come out of hiding, and when they do, Alan asks which of them rolled the 5. When Peter confesses that it was him, Alan chases him down and freaks the poor kid out. I'm honestly quite surprised the kid hasn't had a heart attack by this point. Considering the fact that it's been 26 years since Alan was sucked into the jungle, he doesn't quite realize that his parents no longer own the home and goes around looking for them. Judy eventually explains to Alan how long it's been, and in a state of absolute confusion, Alan runs outside and almost gets hit by a car. Hence why I say almost. The officer then gets out the car and yells at Alan to get off of it because it's brand new. It's also made rather clear for us that the police officer is actually Carl from the factory 26 years ago. Judy and Peter then run out of the house and try to make him not look absolutely insane, but at some point Judy gives up on that and just says that he lost his mind at the Peace Corps. While Carl is talking to the kids, a couple of poop monkeys break into the police car, and then this lovely scene plays out. Alan then runs off to his dad's old factory to discover that the place is long abandoned. He ends up finding a nice homeless guy that explains to him that Alan's dad and mom were so broken up by Alan disappearing that they never stopped looking for him, and eventually he sold his company to fund their search. Homeless guy then gives Alan some clothes and tells him where he can find his parents, but he's too little too late because his parents have already passed away. While Alan is mourning the loss of his parents, Peter comes up to him to let him know that he's not alone. They start heading off from the cemetery when Judy tells Alan that she thinks that they should finish the game. Alan doesn't want to, but Judy brings up a solid point by saying that there is in fact a lion in her aunt's bedroom thanks to Alan.
What do I look like, a ringling brother?
Well, yeah, kinda. They watch a car accident that seems to be caused by one of the mosquitoes stinging some lady, and they steal the lady's freaking car. While they're stealing the car, some mosquitoes try to get to them and somehow pierce the glass. Alan doesn't know how to drive, but he eventually figures it out and takes them all back to the house. When they get back to the house, Alan takes some time to shave and cut his hair, and after saying hello to a poop monkey, they all sit down around the game board to continue where they left off. Judy goes to roll the dice, but nothing happens because it's not technically Judy's turn. Nope, it's actually Sarah's turn, so the crew start off their search for Sarah by going to the house that she lived in when she was a kid. After knocking on the door, someone by the name of Madame Serena answers it, and they ask if she knows where Sarah is. Madame Serena adamantly claims that she has no idea who they're talking about, but Alan isn't convinced.
26 years ago, you played a game with a little boy down the street.
A game with drums. I was that little boy, Sarah.
While Sarah is passed out from shock, the trio kidnaps her and brings her back to Alan's house. Once Sarah eventually wakes up from her nap, Alan pulls out the board game to get started with it, and Sarah rightfully has another panic attack. After some convincing from Alan though,
Oh my god!
Sarah rolls and summons some plants to appear and start attacking everyone, but it mainly tries to eat Peter. Alan cuts a tongue vine thing off the flower with a conveniently placed sword and manages to save Peter. A few minutes later, after the plant attack, Sarah is still freaking out about the whole Jumanji being a terrifying game thing and tries to run away, but Alan brings her back to the board game rather aggressively. Sarah starts talking to the party about how she's afraid of the game, and they all admit that they're scared of the game, so after some more convincing, Alan is able to take his turn. So if you've been paying attention to all the things that have been summoned so far, you'll take note that most of it has to do with the jungle theme in some way or another. But there is one specific thing that is summoned from the game that is jungle related, but very different from the others. And that thing is and Van Pelt's goal for the entirety of the rest of the time that it takes for them to finish the game is to kill Alan so he can't finish it. Alan runs away from Van as he takes shots from his miserably inaccurate gun, and eventually Van runs up on Carl and tries to take a shot at him but runs out of ammo, then completely disappears. Alan eventually makes his way back to the house, and once he gets there, Sarah and him start bickering about how dangerous the game is again. Judy, knowing that there's going to be no end to their arguing, rolls the dice and summons a stampede of jungle giants in the house. Right when they think the worst of it is over, a crane comes in and steals the game board from them despite the best of Alan's efforts. Alan then takes off after the bird in an attempt to get the game back, and the rest of the party follows suit. After a short scene of Van buying a gun America style,
And you'll have to fill out these. Or I could fill these out.
Sarah, Judy, and Peter tries to find Alan by the river. They end up finding him trying to enact a trade deal with the bird by offering it a fish in exchange for the game, but the bird just straight up takes the fish and knocks the game into the water. Alan and Peter then chase after the game, and right before Jumanji washes off the side of a waterfall, Peter manages to grab it in the nick of time. After everyone telling Peter how cool he is, the party starts to walk along the road back to the house when all of a sudden, Carl drives by and spots them. Carl then jumps out of his car and arrests Alan on absolutely no legal grounds. Although what Carl is doing is very against the law, Alan lets him do it because he figures that by this point, Van Pelt has already caught up to them, and what do you know, he's right. Carl takes off with Alan, and then Peter reveals that while everyone was busy, he tried to drop the dice so they'd land on a 12 and the game would be over sooner. Oh, but he wasn't cheating though.
You tried to cheat?
No, I tried to drop the dice so they'd land on 12.
Oh, okay, honey. Well, that would be cheating.
Because Peter tried to cheat, he starts turning into a wolf boy, and then we watch as Carl is driving Alan to the jail, although he still hasn't told him why he's being arrested, nor has he read Alan his rights. Alan and Carl start talking a bit about Carl and how Carl used to work in Alan's dad's factory, and eventually Carl realizes that this dude is Alan. Sarah goes off with the kids to get some bell money for Alan, but while they're trying to use the apparently broken machine, Van steals the game out from Wolf Boy Peter's hands. Van then gets distracted by a crowd of people and Peter steals the game back from him. Peter then runs off with the game and jumps into a car in an effort to get away, but the stampede comes by and almost kills the poor boy. Peter does survive though, and Van comes by while Peter is trapped and steals the game back. Van goes off to the supermarket as Sarah and Judy help Peter get out of the car. The party then goes to track Van down, and while doing so, Sarah sees the game just lying on the counter and tries to grab it, but of course it's a trap and Van takes her hostage. Fortunately though, Wolf Boy Peter gives Van rabies. Alan eventually convinces Carl to let him go and then repays the favor by handcuffing Carl to the car for some reason. Before Alan heads off to basically nowhere since he has no idea where he is or where his friends are, he overhears a call on the radio about there being more weird stuff happening at Sir Saves-A-Lot. He then climbs into the car with Carl in his lap and then drives to Sir Saves-A-Lot. While Alan is on his way to the store, Sarah, Judy, and Peter are all setting up some Scooby-Doo level trap for Van. The plan is to lure Van onto some detergent and then launch a kayak at him in an effort to absolutely obliterate him. Though the plan works out well enough, Van still somehow remains in one piece, and while the trio try to escape with the game, Van shoots the chain off of a tire rack that topples them with tires. Luckily for the trio though, Alan, unable to brake, shows up in the nick of time and pretty much crushes Van with an entire aisle of paint cans. The party is safe and they get back to their game. On their way back to the house, Sarah tells Alan to talk to Peter because he's not okay with the fact he turned into a wolf boy. Alan does his best to help Peter, but ultimately ends up sounding like his father. He does realize that he's being a bit of a dick though, so he says he's sorry and gives Peter a hug instead. They then go to enter the house and find that the entire thing has been taken over by vines. Still having to carry on though, Sarah takes her turn and summons a thunderstorm.
Well, at least we're inside.
Soon after the storm starts up, the house begins to flood, and as the water rises higher and higher, the crew also have to get on higher ground. Eventually, Peter, being the klutz that he is, slips into the water and Alan jumps in to save him. He does end up saving Peter, and then we see Carl and Nora both at the door trying to get into the house, but they can't get in because of the water pressure, which somehow hasn't already broken the door down. Soon after, the door does break, and they both get absolutely wiped out by water. They eventually all survive the flood, and the party goes up to the attic to continue the game. Alan takes his turn, he rolls a 7, and then the floor starts to eat him. Everyone but Alan escapes the floor quicksand, and they all try to help him get out, but to no avail. While Sarah is still trying to pull Alan out, Judy rolls a dice in an effort to end the game, but she doesn't roll enough. Fortunately though, her riddle thingy reverses the adverse effects from the last turn, and Alan stops sinking into the ground. Unfortunately though, Alan and Sarah are now both stuck in the floor instead. Alan then tells Peter to begin his turn even though he's stuck, and Peter rolls the dice. The wolf boy then summons some giant spiders, and all of them start to freak out because giant spiders! Alan tells Peter to go grab an axe from his old shed and kill the bugs with it, and while Peter is off getting the axe, Nora is busy freaking out about how her house is absolutely destroyed, and then Peter makes it all the better by stopping by to say hello.
Aunt Nora, it's me, Peter.
Peter then locks Nora in the closet and runs back upstairs to help his friends. So at this point in the film, there's so much going on at one time that I feel that it's necessary for me to completely ignore a couple things from this scene, just so it doesn't get too confusing. Once Pete makes it back upstairs, he starts hacking at the spiders. Judy walks up to Sarah and puts a dice in her mouth so she can roll since she can't use her hands at the moment, and she ends up summoning an earthquake that splits the house in two, but also frees Alan and Sarah. The game then falls down the newly created pit, and Alan Tarzans to get it back. When Alan lands on solid ground, he is greeted by none other than Van Pelt, who is already waiting for Alan here for some reason. Little does Van know though that Alan was already holding the dice in his hands and was ready to roll, so he just kinda yeets the dice, and luckily enough, he rolls enough to win the game, and everything goes back to the way it was when the game first started, meaning not only did Van and the Stampede stuff go, but they also time traveled 26 years into the past where Alan and Sarah first started the game, which must be absolutely traumatizing for Sarah, who lived an entire 26 years of life that has now just been thrown away. Sarah and Alan hug it out, then Alan's dad comes back into the house to get his notes for his speech. Alan then takes the opportunity to hug his dad and tells him that he's sorry for being a little shit, and Alan's dad apologizes too. They have a happy, loving moment, and before his dad takes off, Alan admits to putting the shoe on the conveyor belt to save Carl's job. Alan and Sarah then toss Jumanji into a lake bed tied to a massive rock, and then we time travel once again to 26 years later. Sarah and Alan are having a Christmas party, and hey look, Sarah's pregnant! Sarah tells Alan that their special guests are there, and they round the corner to meet Judy and Peter with the couple that we haven't met before. Now it's kinda hard to deduce what happened, but basically, Sarah and Alan befriended Judy and Peter's parents and invited them to the Christmas party in an effort to stop stop them from going to Canada and inevitably dying in that car crash that they died in earlier in the movie. Basically, Sarah and Alan just fuck death over. Alan and Sarah start acting weird because they're happy about Judy and Peter being okay, but that confuses the hell out of the family. Alan introduces Peter's dad to the people he's going to be working with since he's working at Alan's dad's factory, and we almost have a nice ending, but it gets ruined by a cutaway to some French kids finding Jumanji washed up in the sand on a beach. God damn it! You know, overall, the film is rather decent, but the problem with it is it's rather decent. I mean, the lighting is good, the audio is well edited, the story is rather concise considering the fact that all they had to work with here was a literal 30-page kids book that was just about some kids playing a board game. And not to mention, the film is very funny. Now, where the movie starts to trip over itself though is all the actors, except for Rob and William, only most of the time fit their roles, meaning that there are plenty of times throughout the film where they don't work. The CGI is downright abysmal. There's a total of 6 or 7 scenes where it's 2-3 minutes of just comedic filler for no reason other than just trying to stretch the watch time. And I mean, none of this really makes the film bad or unwatchable to me, but it does depreciate the overall quality of the film at the end of the day. Now, at the end of my videos, I do want to actually incorporate a bit of a rating system. Most people will create their rating system based off of how good a movie is, or the script, or I guess the actors, the music, things like that. For me, I want to base it off of, would I rewatch this movie or no? So on the rewatchability scale for this, I would have to give it a 4 out of 5, basically meaning that I'd probably watch it again, but I'm not gonna rush to it. But other than that, that's going to be it from me today. If you like this video, then like this video. If you have any specific films you want me to watch or any TV shows you want me to touch on, then just let me know, leave them down in the comments and I'll get back to you. And last but not least, if you want to see more from me in the future, I do upload content like this every other Friday, and so I would like to ask you to please subscribe. But yeah, that's going to be it from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day. Seriously though, where did that other bike go earlier?